All right, that is a new track called Pency Tracer.
Yep, Pency Tracer.
What is
It's a long
Pency?
story.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll just tell it as quickly as I can. Um, my great grandfather only spoke Yiddish, and my grandfather didn't speak Yiddish, but they tried to kind of hang out and play along as best they could. You know, with the language barrier, they had a game where they would try and guess celebrities' names, based on the initials. And so they used to, it's like Gigi could be Greta Garbo or Clark Gable or something like that. And my great grandfather contributed PT, like in very broken English, PT, PT, PT. They played for like over an hour trying to figure it out. This would have been like in the 30s, maybe. And they were trying to figure it out. And they finally gave up. They're like, "What's the name of the celebrity?" Pency Tracer, which is he was trying to
Spencer
say
Tracy.
precisely. And so that's a story that got passed down and passed down and passed down. And I just couldn't help but use it. It's like, I don't know, it felt kind of like a good title for sort of a slick type of character, maybe that would be the subject of a thing like this.
Okay. So yeah, we have Max Kutner here, and
Hello.
Hi, Max. Thanks for coming back. This new album is called Rogue Lash, and
Hmm.
this is a darker album. Although the track we just played is a bit less eerie and mysterious. Tried to open with a little more energy on the video here, but a lot of this album is well, like I told you, it's a slow burn. The tracks are a
Hmm.
lot longer than your previous works, and
Hmm.
we've had you on three or four different occasions, but none of the albums sound like this. And so
Hmm.
I thought, what is going on, and where did this album come from? Especially given some of the ups and downs that you've shared on social media recently. I'd love to hear if any of that is all tied in here.
It definitely is. Basically, the process for this album started um, a couple years ago now. It would have been maybe yeah, like two-ish years ago. My next project after the one just before this, I really wanted it to be a large ensemble or a big band project. And I had a few pieces lurking around and, was just trying to search for what a vehicle would, like what my music would sound like, in that format, because I'd never tried it really before. I think the largest I'd gone for maybe was like six up to that point, and I wanted to aim for at least double that with a variety of different instruments that I hadn't worked with as well. So I wrote maybe like one or two things for it, and then an Android Trio tune I ended up rearranging for it. We had one rehearsal, and I liked it, but I knew immediately that just logistically it was not going to be possible with the resources I was working with. And, there was a character in the music I feel like that wasn't quite coming out the way that I wanted it to. And, personalities involved. It wasn't going to be possible. So, not long after that rehearsal, I played a terrible gig in New York City. Where literally everything could go wrong. I mean, there's terrible gigs abound in New York City and terrible places to try and make sincere statements while also suffering practically in every sense. Um, and the experience of doing this show basically forced me to sit down and reconsider my whole meaning for doing music. Like, I felt like it was kind of like the apex of this period that where it was just not pleasant and kind of around and based on the wrong things. Like different stuff from when I first started playing guitar, getting into music, all that, just the joy that caused was just gone.
What are the
So I
wrong
wanted to,
things?
trying to get recognized, trying to make money, certainly. I mean, it's just like that's insane. Doing it like to have any sort of livable wage, I guess, like making creative instrumental music, and just trying to survive in a place like New York City. It's just more expensive every day, and competition is always on, the electricity is always on, and then, everything needs to be just more and more instant, more and more obvious for it to have any kind of appeal. And that's only, if you're like the one lucky salmon that gets out of the stream, and is somehow like unique in all of it, which never felt to be the case. So, not performing, I'm not really playing guitar for like a couple of months going through it. And I'm just like trying to figure out what it's about, what it has to be about moving forward, because it can't be about the same things. And I had this music that was left over from the time of the large ensemble. And I had a few other things that were even older than that. I think the last track on this album comes from like 2014 or 2015. It had been sitting on a hard drive since then and untouched, and never realized. And I just started kind of spending the time listening to a lot of albums that I liked and trying to figure out the production techniques that were used, not just in like the practical realization of the record, but how it's used to shape compositionally. Um, you know, like I wanted to make this like really big statement, like I was going to do with a large ensemble, like a huge, vast musical statement. And I realized I can just be my own big band. Like, technology for all pitfalls that we're currently suffering through, there's a lot of positive aspects too, and one of them is being able to just go hog wild at home, from like a DAW studio, like a digital audio workspace like Logic or Pro Tools or any of that. And I got really into synth sounds and soft synths and, occasionally like actual hardware and just arranging sounds and layering sounds and making like this really thick texture with everything. So that's part of the sound of the album is just my mixing and mastering. It's the first time I've ever done that with anything, not just my stuff, and sort of crashing into walls and learning from it as I go. That taking a lot of time with it, like not feeling like I was being rushed by circumstances, like there's no need for the album to come out. There has to be a want, you know, like, or if the need is there, it's a personal need. It's not like I'm trying to satisfy a record label or some other people or anything. So taking my time with it, making a lot of mistakes and learning from them, watching endless tutorials on, what compressors are really good on toms, like how to use room mics effectively, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized that the people that were in the large ensemble, if I really wanted to have them involved, I could just have them record remotely or come over, one evening and just punch in like the minute here or the 3 minutes here, in this piece. It's not like a big session thing. I just want the music to be read and like I want to just dig into the tracks, like use the raw material and blend it. So there was that, and then the third aspect being just the personal expression and just the things that I was feeling and the resentment and the, you know, quiet reconciliations that I had to sort of make with myself to feel comfortable making music here moving forward from the experience. Yeah, I don't know. Is that it's not concise necessarily, but that's how this album came to pass.
Well, it's funny. I named my album "Okay, but Why" for those very
Yeah,
same
yeah, right,
reasons. Like, what is the
right.
point of this? Like, you're at least there's a musical expectation from your life. I don't think anyone has any musical expectation from me, and if they're watching the channel, I've been like just some guy, you know. So I thought the same thing. I love making music, but it is kind of a conundrum, especially in this day and age where it's like there's so much music and computers can produce it music through AI in seconds. And it's like it'll sound better than anything you or I can make in our own.
From a production standpoint,
Yeah, that's
maybe,
what I
but not
mean.
from a,
Like
yeah.
you this stupid flies in my face. Sorry. Um, but you'll hear like an AI song, and it's like I couldn't get a snare sound like that. I couldn't get a rip in guitar like that, you know. And it is it's almost demoralizing if you let it be, you know. I'm kind of
Hmm.
curious. Were you letting it? Are you past it, or is it just still there?
I mean, the only thing is that like AI, yeah, it's like it can do a specific thing as good as its input can be for making it. So sure, like I want the snare drum sound from like Peter Gabriel's records or something, but I want the kick drum sound from like Tool's albums, and you could do something like that. But it's like it's only as good as the questions and the input are. Yeah, so it could like do that one thing really, really well, and then you don't have to spend time like really finagling equipment and working within like your modest budget, because I'm sure the bands had a much larger budget to work with and resources and time on their side. Like it's good in that way. Like
Hmm.
if I made this album hardware, with all the actual soft synth, like their analog counterparts and all the people in a room and all that, I mean, it would be impossible. Like, you know, I would need like months of solid recording. And part of this thing was like writing the music as I was sort of producing it and getting into this constant feedback loop with me and the computer a little bit. Um,
Well, what conclusions did you draw, you know, after this period of strife and still producing an album and learning all of this along the way? Like, where's your head at?
that the that the only reason to do it is just because you'd like it. If you don't like it, like don't do it. And I mean, it's something people say to you in various ways, the whole time, going back to when I was a kid, and being interested in like piano and all that, and learn my grandpa like, don't do it if you don't love it, he taught music. And then going in through school and the same thing, all your teachers like, you have to do this because you love it, otherwise what's the point? And it doesn't really sink in because what do you know? Like, oh yeah, 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 sure, and sure, and deep inside you're like, this music is gonna like sustain me in every way, practical or otherwise, like moving into the world, whether or not I'm going to be touring all the time or doing this, like living this weird fantasy life, and then if you strip all that away, it's sort of like, what do you have left? And would you still care about music as much, knowing that you're not going to have millions of eyes on you necessarily, or ears or whatever, and that like the music that you're making is very inconvenient, I guess, in a time where things are expected to be easy and contained and brief, but that's like not the way people express themselves. It's certainly not the way I want to express myself, if you can't tell by me talking and taking my time with this. Like, I think that it was like a time of deep learning and like examination. I was under construction while making this album. I wasn't going out a lot. I wasn't, you know, caring too much about what other people were thinking, or like letting that sort of cloud my judgment, or need a dialogue in that way. I figured like, I just want to have a dialogue with myself on this and have it be like a very personal statement, not necessarily sentimental, but like personal.
Mm.
And I often say to my students, like, when you're going through all of this, it's like, generate your own gravity. Don't live in the comparative. It's just never going to be that way. As much as social media and convenience like really want us to like spy on each other and constantly just get stuck in these loops, it's like, just care enough about what you care about, trust your taste, and generate your own gravity, you know, generate your own world, be your own thing. So that, this process really hammered that home for me, because there was no need to make the album other than me doing it for myself. But then surprisingly, I felt like it was good enough to share, and I like look back at it now and listen. Like, I just heard, Pensy Tracer. It was the first time I'd heard that track back in a while, and thinking like, this is kind of cool. Like, it feels like something I would say, like in the way that I would say it, and that's all you can really hope for.
Well,
Um,
tell us
yeah,
about Stardust Apes, so we
Stardust
can hear that
Apes.
next. Yeah.
So that started as me hammering around really weird chords on a piano between lessons, between students, and I recorded it, and I sort of mapped out the notes of every chord, and then tried to figure out like if there would be some sort of scale or mode. That This is all the technical aspect of it, sure. Like, but all those like little crawling parts in the background are like the shards of those chords. Um, Thematically, I was trying to kind of, I felt like it sounded kind of science fiction sort of inspired by it, and it had this sort of like constant like, you know, sequency crawling thing. It sounded sort of like a machine you'd see like on Lost in Space, or whatever. Um, and at the same time, I felt like it was really groovy, and you know, you could kind of get lost in it or immersed in it in a way. Like the middle of the song kind of feels more like that. But then I was like, well, what could that be? Like, what could I call this that would sort of represent that, and sort of, any number of the characters that I gripe with throughout this whole set. And that would be maybe like toxic optimists and people that are always sort of like searching. I can I conflate like optimism a lot with like space travel, and like the ideas that human beings think traveling space is supposed to be like the reasoning behind it is always like kind of shallow, and like more of the same stuff that we're mired in here, you know, occupying, dominating, possessing all this, So I thought it was like, wherever you go, there you are. It's sort of like, now we're Stardust Apes, it's like going out in there. It's like you're carrying all the ape, the ancestral, junk with it too, and like the sort of shallow notions of it. And I felt like maybe that could be like, that's a good way to sort of use this sound to express that thought.
All right, let's
So,
take a listen.
sure.
From dairy farms to manufacturing, the concept of living and working in space is a possibility with existing technology. That new million miles from Earth would even have a far-out address.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
The search for answers is a goal of planetary exploration, and the journeys of our spacecraft to the near and far reaches of the solar system are beginning to provide some of the answers.
occurs in universe. And it is even more probable that many of these forms are vastly more intelligent than we.
Cool.
It's so funny.
What?
Just the character of the music is just hilarious to me. And like listening back to it, sort of like in hindsight, and just realizing how much like film music had influence over a lot of this album. I mean, in particular, like Lalo Schifrin and Bernard Herrmann, especially on a track like this, just the way this everything is layered. That and then like hip hop, instrumental hip hop had like a really big influence on a lot of these tracks. But yeah, just funny. I mean, I'm proud. One of the things I'm most proud of is just how much character these melodies end up having, and I feel like at the end of all of it, it's like they're really pretty vivid in carrying whatever the title is or the theme of the song. So anyway, all I'm saying is I'm happy with it. That's not that's not a conceit, but I really like that track, and I like the one before it, and all the rest too. So
It is good to like the songs on your album.
yeah, I feel okay other than that one viola note in the beginning and not adding another guitar double in the end part. But
Well,
it'll never be fixed. Whatever.
another interesting thing about this is you are a guitar player,
Hmm.
and there's not a lot of obvious guitar on this album.
Hmm.
A lot of sounds, a lot of excerpts from, I don't know, shows, films, whatever it is. And it's definitely more of a, when I say soundscape, people might think that Robert Fripp or Brian Eno ambient kind of thing, but no, it's more like a tapestry of sounds with music, all supported by music. So how did you take this total 180 from, let's say, Atomic Trio or Evil Genius?
You mean Android Trio?
Oh, Andrew, I'm sorry. I one of my
Atomic Trio would be a great name.
one
God.
of my new clients is Atomic Tech, and so Atomic's been on my my sorry Android Trio.
I mean, you know, I was very much a guitarist with a capital G in Android Trio or in like the Grandmothers or anything like that. I mean, there's been a shift. Yeah, I mean, it's more a question of how guitar can sort of serve the music and also just to get connected to just music in a global sense. Like I'm so used to a guitar, I feel like if I write too much of a guitar, it's going to sound like a guitar. It's going to have like a very specific thing. And I like kind of instituting handicaps wherever I can. Like a lot of times when I do improv shows, I'll deliberately just futz with the tuning pegs just randomly or whatever. So it forces you to break that matrix based like fretboard kind of way of thinking of things. Um, but that also in like getting into the MIDI controller and the keyboard and everything and just trying to find new ways to realize sounds, getting into a dialogue that way. And then guitar later, sort of like thrown on in lots of weird ways, and just making it fit within the global picture of the tracks rather than like this is a guitar thing and I'm like leading this army with my guitar, this army of sounds or whatever. I don't want to be like that. Like I mean, there are a couple of spots sure where there's definitely guitar in the
Yeah,
tracks, but like you say, it was a very conscious effort, I feel like, to only bring the guitar in when I felt like it was necessary.
cool.
So,
So
yeah.
this album is available on Bandcamp at maxkutner.bandcamp.com. I'm gonna
Hmm.
flash the oh wait, here comes the promo text on the screen. Oh, right over Max. Anyway, yeah, so it's at Bandcamp, and is it on streaming as well?
It's on Spotify, it's on Apple. I'm sure it's on some of the other ones, but I know it's on Spotify for
Okay,
sure. Yeah.
cool. So yeah, pick it up on Bandcamp. It's really honestly, this is one of the most interesting albums I've heard in a long time. Uh, it just feels like you're not trying so hard, like you're not playing the attention game. You're just kind of making music, and I struggled with, listening to it, not in a negative way, but it's a more demanding listen. It's definitely not something like if it's in the background, you won't hear it. It's,
Yeah, sure. Sure. I mean, and that's like, again, me kind of against inconvenience and
yeah,
not really feeling like I needed to do that. Like this, it's not to knock being concise,
right.
like in certain circumstances, but like I said, there was like an infinite birth I
Yeah.
sort of gave myself when making this music. And so, I wanted to kind of get as much in there as I could. I wanted to flesh the scenes out,
Hmm.
and that's why the tracks are long. It's like because I felt like I'd want to finish them when they're done,
Yeah.
and not when I felt like I needed to finish them. Like let it ride. Be the opposite of what everybody's telling you to do. And like, here's two verses and a chorus, and this it's like no, no, man. Like I reject your artificial structuring of my thoughts.
Well, before we go, I love some of the titles. Navigating the Nepo Matrix, March of the Middle Managers, I think was another one. But tell me about Wonder TM, and we'll close on that one.
Sure. I mean, Wonder TM is definitely an outlier of the other tracks. And I was talking about the guitar playing. That's probably the most guitar influenced track on the album. Um, I like it was a complete accident, but I love it coming out of the last track that we played because the beginning almost sounds like a spoof of, like also Sprock there through the
Hmm.
the 2001
2001.
music, which is funny coming out of a track called Stardust Apes. Totally an accident. But like the track, I'm playing like a ton of guitars. That was another thing I've been trying to do also is like sort of cut myself off at like three or four notes as a piece and figure out like how I can say as much as I can with three or four notes.
Hmm.
Um, so like that's like the structure of it. I'm not sure like I felt like there was kind of a sense of joy or wonder or like your mind being expanded or something listening to the track with that. I would say another influence there would be like Qawwali music, like the ecstatic Pakistani stuff with the chorus of men like singing this
Hmm.
like these melodies and just getting more and more and more and more intense.
Hmm.
Um, let's see what else on that track. Mark Edwards is playing drums. Mark played with Cecil Taylor and David S. Ware and has been a fixture in Brooklyn and beyond music scenes. I just felt like he was perfect. He sounds like an avalanche on this track. And then my partner Tamara Yadao, also known as Corset Lore, contributed synthesizer to it too. And I hope I'm not confessing too much and just saying it's like we kind of refer to ourselves sometimes as Wonder TM. So it is like a little bit of a track for her and a piece for her and that joy that she brings me. So Wonder TM could also be like read as Wonder Team,
Hmm.
um, you know. But I think the title Wonder TM is a better title because it's sort of like how do you trademark Wonder, and I like that as kind of like a snide sort of little gesture. All the titles are snide gestures, but that would be that one, and it's like maybe the most emphatic, sort of like less snickery piece on the album. Anyway, enjoy listening, and thank you, Anthony, for having me talk about all this stuff. It means a lot to share.
You're welcome. Let's go.